people have been asking, where's the emotion from Ryan Day that they saw during that Georgia game last year? Well, you saw another level of emotion from Ryan Day after Ohio State's 17-14 win here at Notre Dame. I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com, along with Stephen Means and Andrew Gillis. And right as he was coming off the field, NBC got him, and he had a thing or two to say about Lou Holtz and the comments that he made in the last 48 hours about Ohio State not being tough enough, not being physical enough, and that's how they lose big games, and that's why he predicted they would lose again. And he used Ryan Day's name by name as why that was going to happen. And Ryan Day definitely pushed back on that. Ryan Day did it again when he came in the interview room. He was as hot as we have ever seen him. And Stephen, that in a lot of ways I think is something that, I think back to last year, the Rutgers game, where he and Greg Schiano got into that brief little misunderstanding, but like shouting match across the field, across the sideline from each other. People like angry Ryan Day and hot Ryan Day and mean Ryan Day, however you want to say it. And I think that this is, in addition to the win, I think seeing that emotion from Ryan Day is something that Ohio State fans are probably going to be pretty satisfied by tonight.
I wrote after the game that there are still some problems that this Ohio State offense needs to figure out, because this was not a good game. I don't think he called a good game. Offensively, I don't think the offense played a good game, especially the offensive line. But I think emotionally and vibes, he called a perfect week. He set a tone from Tuesday about how they needed to approach things, and then he let it all out. And now, granted, Lou Holtz saying what he said, other people saying what they said probably helped fuel that fire, but there was a level of emotion that was probably already going to be there, because he was like this last year after the Notre Dame game, where it was like, yeah, we're going to prove we're tough. Yeah, we're going to prove we're tough. But it felt misguided last year. This one, people put their names on things that allowed him to attack certain things. I love angry Ryan Day in press conferences, because if he was like that, that's the PG version of it, because children watch. There is a higher level that happens in the locker room that we don't get to see. And so that vibe, that emotion, that can carry them through the rest of the season while they're trying to figure out how to get this offense back to being explosive, especially since we found out today that the defense is pretty good.
So listen, a couple things. Lou Holtz is really old.
Very.
He's really old. And I'm not like trying to be an ageist, but I think maybe his mouth was running a little bit out of his brain in some of the comments that he made, because they don't line up necessarily with all the facts. Ryan Day, after the game, he's admitting, like, hey, we had a bad half in Ann Arbor a couple years ago. By the way, Ryan, you had a bad half in Ann Arbor last year, too. You scored 3 points in the second half. And now maybe that wasn't as much of a physical problem. That's what he was saying. He's pointing more to that physical problem up in Ann Arbor in 21. But it's not like there isn't some evidence, but there's also evidence that refutes this idea that Ohio State was going to gets pushed around in big games. And secondly, Lou Holtz is a Notre Dame partisan. So, he's going to say a lot of what he was saying was why he thought Notre Dame was going to win the game. But it obviously struck a nerve. And Ryan Day has done a good job in his Ohio State career of finding times when they're not the underdog and making them the underdog, making them the team that has to claw and fight for respect when they were favored to win this game on the road against another top 10 team by 3 points. And Andrew, do you think this is something that showed an important change in Ryan Day, or an important attribute in Ryan Day that this team is going to need over these next 8 games to end up being a Big Ten champion and then going on to the playoff after that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think this was such a unique circumstance, because you mentioned it wasn't like he used Lou Holtz by name, and he called out Lou Holtz by name, and he mentioned in the press conference, like, I have other things I want to say, but I'm more classy, or I have more respect, or whatever he said about Lou Holtz. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. But it was not just Lou Holtz. There was a lot of public sentiment that, like, Ohio State, they're falling off a little bit. Here comes Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. They have the better quarterback. They have this, they have that. And I think that he used it in the right way, because you can't do this every week, right? Like, you can't just be like, everybody's doubting you everybody's doubting you against Purdue. Everybody's doubting you against Maryland. This just, to me, felt like the right time to say, you know what? Forget this whole we're going to block out the noise thing. Let's invite the noise in, and let's show everybody what they're saying about you, and let's show everybody what they are saying about us. And I thought he handled that really well. Now, I don't know if the problems are fixed. There are still some issues on the offensive line that you saw tonight that I think need to be rectified. Notre Dame ran the ball fairly effectively, I thought, in the second half. They actually they got rolling a little bit, especially on some of those long touchdown drives. So there still might be this narrative out there a little bit, but for Ohio State to get this, just the way that this win happened, I think is really important, because in terms of what you just saw on that field, that is kind of what Michigan is going to try to do. That is kind of what Michigan has done over the last couple of years, and they got a good O-line. They got a bowling ball of a running back, a quarterback who can make a couple really nice throws, and I think that serves as a nice little test run for that game on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and that should give you confidence for that game. I don't know if it gives you confidence for the other 7 games that you're going to play before then, or whatever it is. It might give you confidence for that Michigan game.
Listen, I said earlier this week that there was all this talk about being aggressive and loose and all that stuff. I thought it meant much more in terms of mindset than it did in terms of Ryan Day as a play caller, and I think I was wrong because they were too predictable tonight. I agree with Steven. I don't think this was necessarily a well-called game from an offensive standpoint. I think they still played tight in a couple of really crucial situations, but I think I was right in terms of it was the mindset. They had to have an aggressive, fiery mindset this week and not a tight, overly bottled up mindset and emotional state. And I think you saw that ultimately tonight because I still, like you said, Steven, there's still things on this offense that have to get fixed. One of them is the offensive line, but I don't know if they win that final play if there isn't some emotion behind the play that's happening on the field. Anyway, a lot more talk about that on Buckeye Talk, and get the text 614-350-3315. A whole bunch more to talk about this game in the week ahead while Ohio State's on bye from cleveland.com.